takes, and Ellen Kuras looking down the lens. And each other. Did we believe that? Were we talking to each other?
So since you mentioned Kate Winslet, our next clip we have is one of her earlier scenes in the film, so why don't we roll that one?
Are you a believer in order?
Order?
Order over landscape.
Well, I admire it.
Looking at these plans, there seems to be no trace.
I would not agree. I think there is pattern enough in number 6 to suggest absolutely...
Do you believe in order over landscape?
Order seems to demand that we look back to Rome or to the Renaissance. What I'm saying is, surely isn't there something uniquely French, as yet not celebrated by us, which needs the rules of order to attain it?
All of my work is based on a principle you choose to deny. I wonder that you tender yourself for a position with someone you believe to be outdated.
Sir, I have nothing but admiration for the scale of your work. You were the first to use such techniques. I must apologize for any insult that I may have unwittingly offered you.
Perhaps, madame, when you have been in the public eye and available for ridicule for as long as my family has, you will think again about this conversation. Good day to you.
So, there's a lot that's sort of implied in that scene. It sets up some of the themes that come into play, particularly the way in which, as you say, she's trying to find her role in this world. Are you the sort of director who gives an actors room to play? I mean, when you see that reaction shot there, which is weighted with meaning, is that the sort of thing you do a lot of takes when you're looking for it, or how do you know when you have it?
You just do. I mean, I hope what you know, as a director, what you do is you set up a working atmosphere, and what your priorities as a director are shared. And so people walk onto the set and you've rehearsed, and you've taken time to do that without anybody else there, so that the actors feel that they're controlling their destiny. You constantly ask actors questions so that they find the answers. And in that scene, the space, as I was saying before, the space between them is the powerful thing, because he's all order, and it's clear from the text that she does not believe in that, but she wants the job, so she's having to be very careful what she says, and then gets thrown out anyway. Good writing tells you what to do, to be honest. You know, you don't impose yourself on a good script. You impose yourself on a bad one and make it work. But a good one always tells you what to do. And it's a mysterious process, is all I can say. If the actors are thinking the right things and they are prepared, and the atmosphere around them is supportive, and they believe in their environment, and they have time, and they feel in control, and not having to pass an exam, that it's creative and the process is being honoured, then you stand a chance.
And you mentioned creating an atmosphere, and you can really get a sense for it in this scene, because there's some really beautiful exterior shots in the film, but even in these smaller intimate moments, you get a sense for kind of the delicacy of the period detail, kind of the blue hues or the green hues, and the feather pen on the table. You keep mentioning Ellen Kuras, your cinematographer, so I want to bring that out a little bit. I mean, if anyone's not familiar with her work, they should be, because she's one of the great cinematographers working today. So somebody like that's worked on such a broad range of projects. What was the collaboration with her like for you?
it was wonderful. It was an instinctive choice. The first time I met her, about an hour later, I said, "You want to do this?" Because she'd read the script, and she came. We met downtown here in New York, and she came in the door holding a book of photographs by Sally Mann, if everybody knows who she is, famous for taking somewhat challenging and controversial pictures of her children. And one of the central themes that Kate has to work with in this film is about her dead daughter. And there's a kind of Sally Mannish quality to that memory. She has to try to pull it into some sort of reality, deal with it, and move on. And it was clear that Ellen and I were going to have a very good imaginative relationship. I was worried that this was going to be a little crippling for her, because she's quite famous for having a camera on her shoulder and being very free. If you've seen Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, you know that, whoa, that camera's moving. If and when you see this film, you'll see that, boy, was she glued in one spot a lot of the time. But I think she enjoyed that. We used to travel into the set every day together in the car, so that we talked through what we were doing. Joined at the hip would be what we were. That scene, however, is an example of where it was difficult for her, because I fell on that room. That's a room in Ham House in London. We shot the whole film in England, by the way, but that's a house called Ham House in Twickenham. And that room was perfect for me because it was all brown paneling and brown shutters. And there was this silent little war going on the set. Every time she would open a shutter, I used to walk and close it. Because I was killing her, because she couldn't get any light into the room at all. But as far as I was concerned, that was the point. And I'm naive enough not to know that I was really making it impossible.
Well, she must like the next clip we have, because it's all outside in the garden, so I don't rule that one.
Macaroon.
Thank you, sir.
My speech went down well, I thought.
It did. The finest examples of humanity certainly enjoyed it.
We may be building with stone, but I can tell you it's a feather compared to the weight of the state. My brother tells me you're inviting new ideas into the gardens. Why?
I've been persuaded to expand my horizons.
Have they been tested?
They are, in my opinion, appropriate.
Appropriate. Last year, we had the Nymphs and Shepherds costume party, and it was not a bit funny, all those haggard faces under flaxen wigs. We looked ancient. I want a window to perfection, so that people can see the very best of themselves. We've grown too old for jokes.
The work will be original, but balanced. The responsibility will be mine.
Yes. It will.
One of the things that those two scenes together really show well is that this is actually a relatively small story instead, in spite of the sort of the big scope of it, the historical element in play, almost to the point where it's theatrical, which opens up a question about sort of your relationship to the theater versus film. I mean, you do so much of both. And this could very well have been a play, as your last film was. So what is your relationship to the theater versus film in terms of, where you think different stories belong?
I don't really like rule books. Well, I can't imagine this as a play for a start. So, but yes, The Winter Guest was. What's interesting there is different countries react in different ways, and when the Winter Guest opened in England, a lot of the journalists there said, well, of course, this was a play and we can see its source. And when it opened here, the same type of journalist said, how was this ever a play? So it depends where you're coming from. I don't know how to answer your question, except that I don't really believe in rule books in theatre or on film. You know, one of the pieces I directed during this gap was a 90-minute monologue. I couldn't imagine that I was ever going to turn that into a piece of theatre, but it was incredibly theatrical, as it turned out, with you know, helicopter assaults and everything, but it was still one woman alone on stage for 90 minutes.
How has your relationship to the theater evolved over the course of the last, let's say, decade and change, being involved in, you know, all kinds of different movies and also finding space to direct on your own? I mean, what role does the theater play versus film? I mean, not to put it into precise rules, but it does seem like you find room for both, which a lot of actors can't.
It's my training, it's what I did for so many years before I, from nowhere, made a movie, and then never expecting to have some kind of movie career. So it's in my DNA, it's my religion, in a way, theatre. It's who I am, I guess. But film is too, because film is for everybody. Theatre is not part of everybody's language, but film is part of everybody's language. So, you know, as a human being, you're watching movies all the time. The tragedy to me is this current battle between film and television and what that's going to do. It's great that great writers are working for television, but it's not so great that people can put great writing on pause while they make a cup of coffee, or they watch it alone. It's a shame that I fear for the 300 people in the absolute dark watching a story together.
But you recently did a television show, right? You're working on TV a little bit.
Song of Lunch, yeah. Well, that would never have been a play and could never have been a film. That could only have been a piece of television. So, and I've got nothing against television. I think it's great. It's just don't let one kill the other. That's what worries me a bit.
The other thing that opens up is the question of the kind of roles you're offered versus the opportunities that you seek out. I mean, especially in a post-Harry Potter world, I can imagine all kinds of different offers must be coming in for the sort of roles you may or may not want to do. But what's your relationship to those kinds of opportunities versus things like this, for example, which you basically made happen through your own initiative?
You're at the mercy of prevailing forces, and if you're talking about film, it's harder and harder to get an independent film made, if that's what you're talking about. And the prevailing mood, of course, is for huge action, popcorn, comic book movies, because that's what the studios know will fill cinemas. In the same way as theatres are getting more and more filled with musicals that you've heard of. Aladdin could have been a terrible musical, but it doesn't matter because it's called Aladdin. So people will go to it, and I don't need to, and I'm sure it's great. And in fact, a great friend of mine designed it, Bob Crowley is a genius. So there's every reason to go see it, but at the same time, it's a dangerous trend, because it means that it's harder and harder to take risks that redefine the word. Theatre doesn't exist unless you redefine the word all the time. What is theatre? I don't know, let's find out. What is film?